Hello, boys and girls. Jarek Defiler, the Patient Gamer, here to talk about a game released in 2018 called Mothergunship. I got Mothergunship for free through the Epic Games launcher a while back and thought I'd give it a go recently. I've racked up about 22 hours on it and feel like it's worth giving a recommendation. Before we get started, though, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for me if you'd be so kind, and let's get started. So here goes. Developed by Grip Digital and Terrible Posture Games, very apt name by the way, Mothergunship is a first-person shooter bullet hell action roguelite with a focus on weapon customization. Did I say weapon customization? I meant weapon abomination mutations, as the sheer amount of crazy, disgusting, grotesque weapons you can design is groin-hardening. I mean, look at this shit. But that's where the game shines, giving you, the player, the ability to do whatever the hell you want with your arsenal. There are limitations, however, mainly in the actual physical attachments you can put on any particular weapon. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't sit. And there's also the energy consumption limitations. Energy is basically your ammo that regenerates after a delay. Every attachment will add to the weapon's energy consumption that can find you running out super fast, or perhaps even unable to use the weapon at all. I've never ran into that problem, however. This leads to the mini-game within the game of figuring out how to build a crazy, unique gun while keeping it in the confines of the game's laws. And I'll say that the laws are fairly lax, as you can build some completely outlandish weapons. You want a rocket launcher with a buzzsaw attached for melee cut-em-ups? Go for it. What about a high-energy cost railgun / precision lightning shooter? You got it. Or you can make a 10-barreled minigun / chain gun / machine gun / bolt gun / SMG that spits out 500 rounds a second. The ideas are endless and lead to some phenomenally fun times. The weapon attachments also have a tiered system, where the higher up you go in tier, the stronger and more pretty the attachment. So the high-end items look all shiny and glossy and pack a bigger punch, while all the low-end items are all rusted and grody and deliver you just the basics. Pretty cool and keeps you going in that item hunt. Now for the combat. It's pretty damn good. Very much the old-style retro FPS of strafe and shoot with first-person platforming and double jump galore. Maps are procedurally generated and will find you taking different tactics to defeat the enemy depending on the layout. As you progress in each mission, you will have the opportunity to gain buffs to HP and even gain extra jumps so that double jump will turn into a triple jump, quintuple jump, hell even an octo-decuple jump. So like any good roguelite, each run is different and keeps you coming back for more. The gunplay is great, but based entirely on you. Depending on what you build, the combat can be a fast-paced action romp or a slower, more tactical precision shooter. The variation in weapon attachments completely change the dynamic of combat. For instance, I am a fan of the lightning and railguns. These tend to be high-energy cost precision weapons that have an extremely slow fire rate, but are big hitters with super fast projectile speeds that can one-shot nearly everything. Whereas my little brother tends to like the multi-barreled fast fire rate approach with all kinds of SMG, machine gun, and saw blade barrels that he adds gravity and bounce attachments to that fling the projectiles around the room like ping pong balls. Both are fun, both are completely crazy, and both are highly effective. Neither of us ever struggled in our missions because what we created didn't work, and that was pretty much the entire time we had playing. There weren't really any guns we made that downright failed. Some were most definitely better than others, but ultimately you can make everything work if you tried. Now with that said, that might be considered a negative towards the game for some, as there isn't really much need to try different builds on your guns simply because everything works. This might be boring to some because what's the point really? Just slap any old attachment on your setup and you got yourself a functioning playthrough. Well, yes and no. I am of the mind that the freedom in building whatever you want is a positive, but I can understand the opposing point of view, mainly that this freedom leads to boredom. Some might consider this ability to build whatever you wish with no blatant drawbacks leading to a stale long-term gameplay loop. Fair enough, I get it, but I don't particularly feel that way because I think the diversity of the maps and missions, as well as the main story campaign and creation diversity of guns, give me more than enough content to keep coming back for more. And each mission will have its own difficulty based on what kind of guns you have, so some builds will be easier to pass each mission than others. So depending on the type of gamer you are, you might find the initial novelty wearing rather thin fairly quickly. Or you might have a blast with it that will get you dozens or hundreds of hours of quality gameplay. Up to you. I'm somewhat middle of the road on this. I think there is enough goods in the Mothergunship's bodice to warrant a few dozen hours of gameplay, but I'm not entirely sure if I'll be getting 100 plus hours on this as there doesn't seem to be a big enough variety of weapon attachments to last that long. Like I said, I've put 22 hours in and I think I've seen most of what the gun creation system has to offer. Could be wrong though, as I have yet to beat the main campaign and I mostly do side missions. There are also more aspects to the game than just the gun creation, mind you. As a roguelite does, you improve your character over time with upgrades that can improve your defenses, movement, energy, resistances, and whatnot. You also have a shop at your home base that allows you to purchase some really powerful top tier items that are generated randomly between each mission. And you can sell unwanted items to a smuggler for gold that you can then use for item purchases or to increase your stash size. This is necessary in the long run because if you fail a mission and die, you will lose all items you took with you as well as those you collected on that mission. I learned this the hard way when I lost a couple top tier yellow items due to a particularly difficult mission that left me in a pool of my own blood and feces. I had taken my high-end railgun only to discover it missing along with my other big attachments when I got back to my hub. So being able to use any excess gold you collect on missions in the smuggler's room allows you to save up for those really beefy items you want so you don't have to rely on just looting them. However, they take a lot of coin to get, so it's not something you can abuse or exploit really. I feel the system is balanced and fair, albeit a little bit grindy. Another criticism I do have is that the joining player in a multiplayer game will not gain the mission story progression the hosting player has. My little brother was the one hosting our games, and we played the entire time together, 20 plus hours, only for me to find that when I got on to play by myself, I gained none of the progression we had made in the main campaign. So I basically have to restart from the very beginning. That said, I was still able to keep all the items, XP, and gold I had collected in our playtime together, which is quite frankly the most important part. So that's a little annoying, but not the biggest deal because we didn't actually play that much of the main campaign anyways, instead opting to do mostly side missions because they tend to give better rewards. However, I'm sure some people who focused on the main campaign might have gotten burned on that, so keep that in mind if you choose to get the game and do some multiplayer runs. Speaking of the main missions, during them you are accompanied by the voices of your handlers who are a quirky, goofy bunch that are not meant to be taken seriously at all. The humor is a bit hit or miss depending on your style. I found myself skipping a lot of the dialogue not only because I found it to be a little annoying at times, but also because it does the grave sin of blocking your progression until it's complete. For instance, one of the NPCs will be delivering exposition or making jokes at the start of a mission, and you won't be able to go through the door until their dialogue ends. Fairly annoying, but at least it's skippable. Also, some dialogue will interrupt others if you wander into an area that starts new dialogue. Not a big game breaker, but again, fairly annoying. So despite saying all that, I still highly recommend you patient gamers out there with a knack for roguelites and old school first person shooters to give Mothergunship a try. It's a pretty decent time with an innovative gameplay loop that holds your attention while poking your brain meat when it comes to prying out your creative side. Depending on the type of gamer you are, you might get a good couple dozen hours out of it, or maybe even 100. I'm still not done yet despite 22 hours in. In fact, I feel there's still much more the game has to offer, even though I think I mostly figured out the weapon creation system. Either way, why not support a decent little indie studio and give them your hard-earned cash for a fun ride that won't disappoint? And like I always do with my review videos, here's a taste of the game's soundtrack. Composed by Mike Mirabello, this is an exquisitely unique track titled A Toggy Trepidation, which is actually a callback reprisal to Terrible Posture's 2014 game, Tower of Guns. Enjoy. This has been Jarek Defiler. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to your fellow patient gamer. You all have a great morning, afternoon, evening, or night, depending on where you are. I'm out.